Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're still watching Sunrise at Sea right here on CTV. Welcome to Our Views segment, where we talk about everyday life situations and conversations that affect our everyday life. My name is Apollo Sarah. In studio with me, Shiva Nauma, Agi Uwase, Priva Elibas. Good morning, ladies. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Sarah.
How are you?
We're good.
I am good. So today we're going to be discussing something that everybody has. Yes, everybody has it. And we're going to be discussing egotism. Well, the ego has a very bad rep. Everybody carries or holds ego in a negative connotation. And it has become the villain of self-help. All right. And many people don't even know how to distinguish between self-importance, egotism, or just self-worth. All right. So we associate it with being entitled or ignorant. And that is why a lot of us try to shun away from having an ego. So today we are going to be discussing egotism. And we're going to be discussing, is it a bad thing or is it a good thing? And the definition of egotism is the fact of being excessively conceited or absorbed in oneself. And you may be asking, what is the difference between egoism and egotism? Well, here is the difference. Well, egoism is self-centeredness. If a person is full of his self and selfish in his thought and actions, we consider that person to be full of egoism. On the other hand, egotism, the one with the T, is when a person is insensitive to the feelings of others, and this can be considered as the main difference between the two. And you may be wondering, does everybody have an ego? Yes. Everyone does have an ego, and psychologists say that there's nothing wrong with having an ego. But ladies, I would like to have your thoughts. Like to know your thoughts. What do you think?
Well, former president of the United States of America, Donald Trump, once said that, show me someone without an ego and I'll show you a loser. Yeah. So
just like that.
Yeah, just like that. He said, show me someone without an ego and I'll show you a loser. And I think I can agree with what he said. Just like Sarah mentioned in her preamble, we all have an ego. We cannot run away from the fact that we all have an ego. We all want to do something that, you know, is gratifying to our needs. It's bringing us happiness in one way or another. But then having an ego can also go the other way if it is used the wrong way. Yeah. If it is used the wrong way, if it is over-exaggerated, it can be a bad thing. But I think it is important for everyone to actually have an ego, to have that sense of self-worth, and, you know, thinking that you can get anything done if you put your mind to it. There's some of my favorite people who people think have a huge ego. Like, I think all of us have had people mention, like, but that person has a huge ego, this person, you know, has an huge ego. But I'm like, wow, that's what I want. That's what I want to see. I want to see people that confident and believing in themselves. I love Kanye West. I love Ye. I just cannot imagine someone, you know, having that that self-importance to themselves, and no one can actually alter them or even make them think different.
Yes.
It's important for you to have an ego. I think if it is used the right way, it could be used to one's advantage.
I think I'll definitely concur with what Pri has highlighted on. And I would say having an ego could go both ways. It could go bad and it could go good. But in the good light, I would say when you have an ego, it's sort of like knowing who you are, knowing what you deserve, knowing that you will not allow people to walk all over your head. However, that could also be toxic, because then with your ego, you will not allow advice from anyone. And your ego is high, you know everything.
Yeah.
So you will not take advice from anyone. You will not agree that sometimes you can win, sometimes you can lose. You will always think that, no, it is someone else's fault, the reason as to why I've lost this particular challenge. But I would mostly say when it comes to ego, it's always a reminder that you are worth, you are deserving, you are loving, and you deserve to be treated in a certain way. But it gets different or toxic when you say, Shivan, you have to treat me like, you go pointing out people and saying you have to treat me that way. No, it should come naturally also. So in a way, it becomes toxic when you over-exert your ego on people, forgetting that not everyone is going to be there to baby and please your ego. And it gets even worse for the men. Like these are egocentric creatures, as we know. They love their ego. So for very many men, drawing down on their ego is something they do not like. Yeah.
Well, for me, yeah, having an ego is a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing depending on how. First of all, some people are egoistic, innately egoistic. That is how they were born. they were born with a huge ego, and some people learn it over time, especially when people walk all over you. When you rediscover your self-worth and who you are, then you kind of become egoistic. I will say that having an ego is a good thing, because you realize most people who are egoistic or egotistic, whatever that is, they're usually competitive people. They're usually high achievers. They're people who love good and the finest things in life. You talked about they know their self-worth, they know their self-esteem, which can help you along your career. Trust me, when you're an egotistic person, you talked about Kanye West. He's the kind of person that never wants to lose, or even when he loses, he's always back on his feet because he has a big vision for his life. And that comes with his ego. But then an ego can be bad depending on how you feed it, because it's always hungry. The more you give it, the more you feed it. Or you can imagine, put yourself in a situation where you're always hungry, even you've just eaten, you've just, taken some water, but you're hungry and thirsty at the same time. Now, the moment you continue feeding it, it grows bigger over time. And if you don't control it, it can be detrimental in a way that you will lose your family. Let's say you have issues with your wife, or you have issues with your children, and because you're an egotistic person, you cannot accept or admit to anything wrong. It's the other person that is wrong. You are the right person. You don't want to take advice. You don't want to listen to what other people have to say, because it's all about you. No, listen.
It's not cast in stone. It's not like the gospel
That's why I'm saying. The moment you keep on feeding it, actually, you are bound to become a narcissist. You know that, right?
How about
because
you
it's
listen
entirely
and
up to you.
Yes.
Yes, because it's entirely up to you. So it just has to be a healthy ego. A healthy ego is very good.
Yes. Well, psychologists go on to say that there's nothing wrong with having an ego, and there's nothing wrong with feeling important. But the ego needs to be regulated. It's like there's a speedometer on it. It has to be regulated. Otherwise, problems will arise when it affects your decision making, your mood, or it turns you into a victim, an underdog, or makes you feel superior to others in order to justify your behavior, whether good or bad. And everyone has an ego, and there are many definitions of the ego, but to simply put it, it's your sense of personal identity or feelings of self-importance, and it helps you to identify your uniqueness, to stand out or stand up for yourself, and to put plans into action. Now let's talk about some of the signs that you may be having an oversized ego. Like the ladies have said, it has to be regulated. It can be good and it can be bad. But sometimes when it drifts into the negative, it could be because you have underlying issues. If something that I have learned on this show is that everything is a symptom of an underlying issue. So your inflated ego could be because you have some sense of inferiority or insecurity.
Or you're looking for a sense of belonging.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That could also be that, because you're trying to stand out, you're trying to be seen, means that you're either a lonely person, you want to make friends, but some people go about it the wrong way. I understand people like Kanye West or Donald Trump. These are people who have a high level of self-worth.
Importance.
Or importance. You get me? Actually, it may not even be self-worth, it could be importance. But we need to understand, where does this derive from? Are you truly this person, or are you someone who grew up not being seen, not being heard, and now you're taking the opportunity to take back that power? But anyway, here are 6 signs that you may have an oversized ego. Number 1, people that have oversized egos, they have to always be right. Well, according to a famous psychologist called Sigmund Freud, he goes on to say that ego operates according to the reality principle. So they always feel that they have to be right. Listen to me, I know better than you. I am a lot more educated. I'm a lot richer. I am on a bigger platform than you, so I know better than you. So don't even say anything, just shut up. Then another one is they always want more. You're never satisfied with what you want. You have one wife, you want to get a second one, a third one, a fourth one, a fifth one. And the other one is they must always win, and they are always sore losers. And number 4 is they require constant recognition. They're the kind of person who would walk into a room and expect everyone to greet them first, acknowledge their presence, compliment them, and so on and so forth. They have one-sided conversations. They never want to listen. And whenever you talk to them, they dismiss you. And then the last one is they lack empathy. They do not care. They do not care for your problems or what you're going through. They do not care that you got a promotion. anything that happens to you is none of their business. They could care less. So ladies, let's talk about egotism in our interpersonal relationships. And that is at work, in the professional setting, and in our relationships. Do you think that this is a big factor, and or it can affect relationships if it is not properly handled? What do you think, Aki?
I do think that it can affect your relationships, because if you were giving those the signs, if you are the kind of person who is always talking and never listening, that is already one-sided.
Yeah.
If it's a friendship, you want to be in a position where you are having a conversation. I am pouring into you, you're pouring into me. I'm not just taking it from you. If, let's say, it's a workspace, if you're the boss, yes, you are the boss. You are the boss, but then again, sometimes you'll find like your subordinates or your employees have some good things to say, but if it's always coming from your end, let's say they have their grievances, they probably won't even present them to you because your ego is too big to actually to admit that you were wrong. Maybe you did something wrong, you know. So it can affect your interactions, and also it can affect your growth, because at the end of the day, you will remain stunted only to what you believe in, only to what you want as a person. You will not allow your friends to give you advice. You will actually find yourself on a downward spiral at some point, because if you're not getting advice, you're not, no man is an island. At the end of the day, we are people, and we pour into each other. We learn from each other. If you don't want to learn, if you don't want advice, then it just doesn't work. It affects your relationships in one way or another.
What about you, Shivan? How would egotism affect your interpersonal relationships?
One, when like you have mentioned, when it comes to ego, signs of people who really have an egoistic nature, and when it gets toxic, is that one, you'll never take advice, but also you will never learn to say sorry. Now, in all walks of life, whether interpersonal, whether romantic, whether at work, whether at home, the word sorry, asking for forgiveness or showing that you're sorry, is a very big deal. One, it puts out fires, it could end relationships and stuff like that. So if you are someone with a very big ego that you cannot even accept that you're in wrong, you know, there are people who know that they're in wrong, but they'll say, I will not say I'm sorry. And that happens a lot in men also. I have noticed it, because they never want to say that I am sorry, you know, I have offended you in this way, how can I make it right? So that alone shows you that you can never survive in personal relationships. But when it comes to work, when it comes to ego, say you are a presenter, you are an on-air talent, say you are a video editor, that is the role that you are assigned to do, and then your supervisor asks you to take on something. I mean, what is the worst that could happen to you if you're on air talent and they told you, could you please cut for me this clip? Like, nothing will be taken away from you, but because of your ego, you feel like, no, that's not in my contract, that is not in my job description, I cannot do that, but it will not take anything away from you. If only it will, it is actually adding you skills, you know, it's an added advantage. So when in terms of interpersonal relationships, work, family, home relationships, when it comes for egocentric people, being sorry, admitting that you're in wrong, but also never wanting to take advice. In this world, if you don't take advice, how will you survive? I know advice you have to weigh, but at least be ready to listen. How many people do we approach and you say, you know what, Shivan, I don't think that color of lipstick looks good on you, but because this morning you have woken up feeling fire, no one can tell you otherwise. How about you put your ego down and listen? Maybe on that day, God knows, you might be meeting your crush, and because you're putting on the wrong shade of lipstick, now see how you're going to date your ego.
But you see, what's really crazy to me is that there's a very thin line between having an ego, an elevated ego, or being egotistic, and self-worth, or self-awareness, or just not caring. Because like the example that she gave, somebody might tell you that does not flatter you, but then on the other hand, this is now your ego speaking, like, I don't care what you think, this is not about you, is it on your body, leave me alone.
Exactly.
So again, how do we draw the line right there
Between
between the two?
It's very hard. Like,
Tough,
I've been thinking so hard about egoism and everything that comes with it, and you realize that the same, you know, the positive or the healthy egos that we've talked about, and how it can bring about positivity. If it is used the wrong way, it can also still bring about all these bad things or the negatives. I know Sarah talked about, asked the question of how does ego affect our relationships. I would want to think it affects them both ways, like not entirely like in a negative light. Now imagine yourself being in a relationship with someone who is sure of themselves, yeah, like they have that ego, but a healthy ego that they know for a fact if they're faced with any challenges, if they're faced with any situations, they have the confidence, they have the capacity to actually, you know, deal with them and, you know, handle them head on. But then we also see ego, on the other hand, can also affect your relationships. If, for example, you the ladies, you did highlight on it, not being able to allow someone else to speak or listen to their opinion and stuff like that. But when we bring it to the workspace, the work environment, I feel like ego only affects you if you come in with so much, I don't know how, so much importance, because I mean a workplace, it's just not you. There is so many people, there's so many individuals that you know, that you're going to be working with. So I like what Dwayne Johnson said about ego back in the day, and in regards to the workspace and all those things. He said, check your ego at the door. Yeah, it's going to kill your opportunities. It's going to kill all those good things that lie ahead of you. So ego is something that is going to that I'm on the fence with. It can affect your interpersonal relationship in the best way possible, and it can also ruin your relationships if it is used the wrong way. So for me, yeah, it's 50-50 for me. It's 50-50 for me, and still drawing a distinction between self-worth, self-importance, and egotism is something that is going to be very hard, because I mean, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't possess both. So
Yes, you see, for the aspect of self-importance, for example, in an organization, you will know that you deserve to be there, you deserve better, you deserve to do what you're doing. But when it gets to the line of being toxic ego, you feel like you're the most important person in the organization. Like, if I left, this organization would close. Now that is toxic ego, because I kid you not, regardless of who you are, HR or who or what, organizations still continue. So now that is where the aspect of self-importance and being egoistic actually draws the line, because self-importance, you know that you're worthy, you know you will do as you're supposed to do, but with your ego you will think that, you know, I am the most important person, and then you will suppress everyone and make them feel like, guys, I am the reason as to why this company exists.
So how do you put your ego in check? If somebody right now watching feels like, oh, I have been told a couple of times that I have an ego problem, how do you put that in check without also selling yourself short? Because it's really tricky. How do you put your ego in check without selling yourself short? Because sometimes people are going to push you to the edge. And I saw a tweet, actually a quote, that said that people know your worth, they just hope that you don't know. Exactly. So how do you put your ego in check without selling yourself short? I'm really curious. How do you do that?
I think I would have to say, just, you know, make sure you have that self-worth regardless, because at the end of the day, I feel like people who usually say, but that chick has a big ego, or that guy has a big ego, it's coming from a place of insecurity. It's coming
from their part, or your
from their part, not from their part, because
so they're projecting onto you.
Yes, they are projecting. Maybe they see some quality that you have, that you possess, that they do not possess, and it pains them, it kills them. Like, how is Sarah that confident? How is Wawasi that confident, and they do not possess, you know, that confidence? So it can also come from a place of, you know, people are basically saying you have a huge ego because they cannot move the way you're moving. They're not confident the same way you're confident. They cannot execute things the way you execute them. So it comes from a bad space. But I would have to say the only way you can keep your ego in check, of course, is having regard for people's feelings and what they're experiencing and everything that comes with that. But then also understanding that as a person, you also have your ambitions. You also have to care about your happiness, and you come first. There's nothing wrong with you coming first, man. We all put ourselves first.
The issue of self-worth and then being an egoistic person, I'll say, like, let me just talk about self-worth and self-esteem. I think you have to be the kind of person that does not beg for what you know you deserve. Let's say in a relationship, you don't want to beg that person to check on you. You don't want to beg that person to treat you the right way. You know your self-worth. So if you see that they are not really doing what they're supposed to do, if you feel like you are getting less than you know you deserve, then you know your self-worth. That is where you find yourself putting yourself in such out of those equations. Let's talk about being an egoistic person. First of all, like, I think we all have mentioned it. 50% of even when we're back in school, they would say that we get 50% of the knowledge from class and you know all this, and then the other 50% is from our interactions with our friends, from interactions with our family members. So you cannot actually, like I mentioned earlier, no man is an island. You can say I have it all, I have all the knowledge, I have, you know, all the self-esteem, I have all this. If you actually had it all, then you would be your own doctor, you'd be your own lawyer, you would be your, you know, you'd be everything. But the fact that you're not everything, let's say you're thriving at business, you're thriving at business, yes, that's a good thing. But if you want help, you will go to a therapist.
Yeah.
If you have it all, you wouldn't be in position to go there. So for me, I think everyone should just have an open mind. Have the self-worth, have the self-esteem, but have an open mind. Learn to know that it's okay to, you know, someone else can correct you. Get advice if need be. Listen to people. Don't be the only one talking. And also, I think Siobhan is the one who mentioned it. In the event that you are wrong, learn to say sorry.
I think I have a problem with listening to people.
but you have to listen.
As an adult, I think I have a huge problem with someone telling me what I should do. I mean, I could pick your advice, but I'm not going to necessarily put it into regard. I don't know if that makes me an egocentric.
No, actually it doesn't. The mere
that.
fact that you have taken time off to even listen
to them.
Now,
That's
an egoistic person will not even listen. That is the thing. An egoistic person will be like, you're telling me mom's advice, but you're not a mother. What are you telling me?
So what if actually I listen, but then challenge your opinion?
It's okay. That's
better.
a conversation.
That's even better.
It's a conversation,
Okay.
which is a
That's
good
better.
thing.
I think that we have an understanding.
You don't have to take their advice. You don't have to do what
You're
they're
trying
asking.
to see
But
if you
at
fall
least
into the
can
line.
you listen to
Because
them?
I was thinking there's no way someone is just going to tell me because they just want me to listen to them. I should take what they're saying as the gospel truth.
And egoistic people are close-minded people.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we don't
Well,
have to-
in the beginning, I did say that everybody has an ego. Well, some people have it really inflated, and other people just have a normal or healthy size portion of ego.
Or deflated.
Exactly.
Deflated,
Yes, some people tend to quiet down the ego in their mind because your ego is basically the mediator between the conscious and unconscious. That voice in your head that tells you, how can you let them talk to you like that? That is your ego. Or the person, or that voice in your head that's telling you, sit down, don't. That is your deflated ego right there. So you have to have equal measure and have it in healthy portions, because you have to know your self-worth, but at the same time respect other people's boundaries, respect other people's views, respect other people's advice. You have to just be a good person in general. Well, on the other hand, there's the toxic ego, that is the inflated one, and this is where ego is particularly toxic because instead of learning from our mistake, it blames other people, or it descends into hatred and resentment. And you may be wondering, is having an ego a mental health issue or illness? No, it's not. But however, the condition is termed as egomania. That is people who have very, very inflated big egos. And it's a condition whereas it is not classified as a personality disorder. However, psychologists consider it as being abnormal. So ladies, let's talk about how would you manage someone who has a big ego. If this person is somebody you love, you care about, could be your parent, could be your best friend, could be a colleague, somebody you have no choice, but this one is in your life. They are stuck with you.
Young or adults, because for the young people would beat kiboko.
No. You see, with children, they're more or less in a trial period. They're learning things and they can unlearn. Children are a lot easier to learn, adapt, and also unlearn or relearn.
Yeah.
When it comes down to adults, you feel like because I went through whatever situation, now I have learned my lesson and I do not want to upgrade from that. So some people have mannerisms that are stuck with them forever. Ever had the quote, a fool at 40? So how would you manage or deal with somebody who has a big ego? What tips would you share to somebody who is struggling with a very egotistic or egocentric mother or father or colleague or boss? What advice would you give them?
For me, honestly, it's about sitting them down. But first of all, they don't even listen.
Exactly. So how are you going to
make? But I would definitely, if I talk to you about it over and over again, I think unless I would mention that, you see, it cannot be you always saying this and that. it cannot be me always in wrong. You have also done some wrong things, especially let's say it's a friend, maybe it's your boyfriend. They do something wrong, but they never want to admit. They're always gaslighting you.
Those are the worst
always
kind of
trying to
people.
project it onto you, making it seem like you're the bad one, even when they know that they are wrong. Those egoistic people, such kind of people, I can only take in so much. It can be this one time I'll tell you, see, we actually need to talk. You did this, I mean, you're wrong. I don't like people, I don't like people who gaslight people, and I don't think people can thrive at gaslighting me. I have learned that over the days. So for me, if it does not work, I will remove myself from the equation.
So if it's a boss,
Immediately.
you will quit.
But you want, listen, you don't want to be in a toxic work environment at the end of the day. It will depress you. You'll find yourself stressed. You'll find yourself grumpy every other day. Sometimes, if it does not work, you just remove yourself from the equation. Because what's the point of being in a space where you're not happy, where you're always stressed, where you're always grumpy, going back home, and even you projecting your stress on other people because you have a boss that is stressing you. Listen,
in this economy,
yes, like you just have to think about you and focus on you and really remove yourself from equations that do not help you grow in any way.
Yeah.
Whether it's a relationship, whether it's a friendship, whether it is a work environment. Think about you and your mental health. That is what I could say.
To add on what Agnes said, one, how to deal with someone who has a very inflated ego. First of all, people with inflated egos think that there is nothing better than being them. Now, already I am Shivan. I'm looking at Aggie and Priva and Sarah and saying, guys, what life are you living? There is nothing better than being me. Like, I'm the big deal. I'm the real MVP. That is one. So the first thing is you need to understand where they're coming from.
Yes.
Is their ego a deflection? Is it a mechanism of they feel when they were growing up they were not appreciated?
Yeah.
Is it that constantly they were always talked down upon? Because some people, like I said, for very many people, we react a certain way because of an underlying issue. So for very many people who have inflated egos, they're coming from somewhere. They're coming from PTSD, they're coming from trauma, they're coming from families that have not appreciated them. So how about you take the time off to actually appreciate them? You know that workman who walks in and they're very angry and their ego is high? Be like, good morning. You have a lovely pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Show them appreciation. Maybe then they realize, hey, guess what, guys? It's not actually me against the world. Yes, I can fit into this environment and then work beautifully. So the first thing, understand where they're coming from. Learn to appreciate them and do not cease to give them kindness and love. Because guess what? That is all they need. Let me give you an example of a few men that I have dated. Very high egos, you know?
How many?
Very high egos, but all they needed was appreciation and love. You waking up and saying, good morning, babe, I love you, you look amazing. You have already inflated their ego, and then their toxic ego will go down automatically.
Feeding their ego, because I mean,
you see,
egoistic people thrive off praises. You know, they thrive.
Exactly.
On, you know, those things.
Exactly.
Yes.
So the more you do not
like
do
you're
that,
feeding
exactly. So the more that you do not do that, you're already inciting them. But hey, guess what? I beg sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. The reason as to why very many people want those words of compliments and validation is maybe because they did not get them while growing up. So it's very easy for us to sit here and say, oh, you have a very big ego, you want to be complimented all the time. But what if throughout my childhood I was never told I was beautiful? I want to hear that from someone. Thus, my ego.
You see, I understand where you're coming from, and I absolutely agree with that, because sometimes some people just need love. And some people also just, on the flip side, just have the toxic kind of ego. So if you put yourself in a place where you're pouring into this person, yeah, you might have your childhood traumas, you didn't get enough attention, you were not seen, you were not heard, etc, etc. But you see, also you as the person who is receiving this kindness, it is your responsibility to work on that problem so that your partner can experience the best version of you. So it's not just about taking, and I agree, you need to pour and give love for as much as you can. When you find yourself that now it is too much, please withdraw, exit.
Maybe
we are
I'm
not
the
going to die.
Maybe I'm the only person who doesn't look at having an ego as such a terrible thing, or even having a downside, because if it were up to me, I would think everyone should have an ego, should be confident in themselves, and you know, just basically save us time. We don't have to feed you
Yeah,
with so
save
much
us
love
time.
and validation and
You're
complicating
wasting
things.
Prima's time.
Like complicating things. Just be sure in who you are, but then manage it in a way that it does
Regulate it,
not, that
Does
you
not
don't
affect
that you
other
don't push
people
people away from
negatively,
you.
yeah.
Not
Yes.
necessarily affected. You could be affected because someone else is confident. That has nothing to do with them. But if you find you're pushing the people closest to you away from you because of how you're treating them, how you're talking to them or relating with them, then that becomes a problem. But otherwise, I would say please have an ego. Be so confident in yourself that no one can tell you anything.
Nothing.
Exactly.
Then no one can tell you nothing.
Well, here are some tips on how you can deal with people who have strong egos in the workplace. I'm going to start with the workplace and then in your private relationships. Number one is always involve leadership and upper management. This is one way to soften someone's ego over time, is to involve leadership. If you are talking to your supervisor and your supervisor can never be told anything, can never be corrected, can never take positive feedback, then involve his supervisor in the situation. Also, it's very important to differentiate between feelings and fact. You must have the facts. You must be able to back, in a professional setting, always have proof to back up whatever argument or statement you're trying to make. Always have statistics, always have reports, always have emails, anything. You must have fact. Just treat it like you are in court. Have your proof. Number two, use support from your colleagues. If you have a very stubborn supervisor or boss or another colleague who is just making your life a lot difficult, then just turn and ask for support from somebody else and ensure that you get as much support as you need. The next one is align and make alliances. It's very important. We've always had the term office politics. Well, listen, honey, to survive in this corporate world, you need to play the game.
You need to play your cards right.
It is Hunger Games out here. You need to play
And
the game.
Squid Game.
But you have to
Make
play it
alliances. Yes.
You have to
It's a
play it
jungle.
right.
Make alliances and always align yourself with the people who can help you get the job done or get you to where you want to be. Number four is get to know the person personally. It wouldn't hurt. Siobhan said it. Get to know this person personally. Buy them breakfast once in a while, lunch. Apply the same.
Feeding.
You're feeding.
You're feeding the ego. No.
You know, get to know them so that you can understand where this toxicity is coming
Can't
from.
I
Where
buy
this
you water?
inflated
Do I have
ego.
to buy you breakfast?
Water is very important. You can also buy them water. Get to know them personally so that you understand. You could find that this person is just using it as a defense mechanism and they're using it the wrong way. So perhaps a little kindness goes a long way. It will help them break down these walls. And number five, give them honest and supportive feedback. Do not point out the mistakes, just show them, point them in the direction of how they can improve. And in your interpersonal relationships, you can also apply the same methods, but I'll just give you a few. Number one is kindness. Be kind. You must always be kind. That is the only way, because the only thing that can cool hate or inflated egos is love and sweetness and softness. All right. Number two, respect people's boundaries. Do not overimpose, because we always have when people are fighting us, we intend to try and also fight back. So perhaps take a step back and let them see for themselves that perhaps they have done something wrong. And then the last one is, because the ladies did mention this, but like Aggie said, in the event that all these tactics do not work, it's best for you to just exit the chat.
Remove yourselves.
Remove yourself from the situation. All right. And then I just want to share a few tips before we end this segment on how, if you are dealing with a big ego, if you are the one who has a big ego, these are some of the steps that you can also impose. You can imply to yourself. Number one is learn to be, or rather have, a learner's mindset. All right. You must always learn. Do not always think you know, because you cannot rely on your own understanding. Even the Bible says it. Always ask. Number two, be humble. Okay, sit down. Kendrick Lamar said it. Keep these words at the back of your head. Even though you know your self-worth, always be humble and don't think that you are ever better than anybody else. Ladies, are there any other tips that you'd like to share with anybody right now who is dealing with a big ego?
I think it's okay for you to have a big ego, but then understand that some areas of your life require you to have a small ego. That's what I'll have to say.
If you find yourself in a situation where your ego is limiting your growth as an individual, as when it comes to your career, make sure, do something and make sure you let go of it, because when it comes to limiting your growth, then you don't need that ego. You don't need it.
And Shivan, lastly,
but finally, I would say, if every time you feel that you are the best thing that would ever happen to anyone, or you're the best thing that ever happened, know that you have an ego and check it at the door.
Exactly. And lastly, focus on the effort, not the outcome. All right, put in the work. Focus in the now, right now. Get the job done, whether it's at work, whether it's in your relationship. If you're dealing with conflict, focus on solving it as opposed to the outcome of it. And then choose purpose over passion. You must choose your purpose every single day. And if you identify your purpose, you will easily tone down your ego a bit, and then shun the comfort of talking and shun the comfort of talking and always trying to get into altercations with people. Sometimes understanding is better. Listen. It starts by listening. All right, you must always listen. And then the last one is kill your pride before you lose your head. I saw a quote that said, "The ears don't listen, go with the head." All right, that is all we had on this segment, but keep watching Sunrise at Sea.
Well, like the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. Thank you so much for being a part of our different conversations. We started off with the news and the sports updates, and later on we went on to the Twitter jabs, where we discussed Uganda's performance and highlights, that is at Birmingham in the Commonwealth Games 2022. And I was joined by Clive Chaze, and he is a sports journalist as well as a sports analyst. Also, I was joined by Dr. Bernard Patrick, and he is the Secretary General of the National Council of Sports. Also, we talked about ego. Learn to check your ego at the door. It's very important. Show me a man without an ego, and I'll show you a loser. And that is in Pri's voice. But also, parting shots. You know, the week has finally has started, and you know it's a Monday, and you might be low on energy. I think that the one thing our parents never told us, that when we were born, for those that have watched Jumanji, I feel like they should have just said, "Welcome to Jumanji." However, survival is for the fittest in this world of Jumanji. I wish you a lovely, lovely week. And from the team and I, don't blink.